As the saying goes, evil deeds are done by evil people. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wordplay and the Word. This is R.A. Sweeney. Here in this series, I like to just talk about interesting, different wordplay type things and nuances of language, just things that you might not notice if you're only reading things in the English. Today, I feel like I'm switching it up a little bit. What I want to talk about is really kind of some narrative patterning, and there's a little bit of wordplay mixed into it as well, but just kind of looking at the interesting way that the story develops around some unique ways that things are presented. So I'm talking about a few chapters long passage in 1 Samuel towards the end. So in chapters 24 through 26, we have kind of this weird progression of Saul comes to hunt David. David has the chance to kill Saul, and he doesn't. And then there is kind of an intermission where there is the story of David wanting to just receive some food and maybe some wool and things like that from a man who is shearing his sheep, because he's been out protecting the sheep. And then again, there's another situation with Saul. And so it's kind of a very mirrored type of story. And I feel like that's definitely intentional. So the way the story works out, you've got Saul in the very first story. He goes into a cave to go to the bathroom. He's relieving himself. And David sneaks up behind him, and all of his men are telling him, like, hey, now's your chance. You should kill this guy. And he's able to get right up to him, but instead of killing him, he cuts off the edge of his cloak, which I was reading it to my kids, and they were like, how in the world could David have snuck up that close to Saul while he's pooping without Saul noticing? Which was ironic because actually right before I had read it, I just happened to be listening to the Bible Project podcast, and they were talking about the same thing. And so it's just kind of a funny story when you think about like what must have been going on with Saul in that cave. But that's not really the point of where we're going. So he decides to just cut off the fringe of Saul's cloak. And it says that he even felt bad that he did that. Like, I should not have even done so much as just cut the edge of the cloak of Saul, which has some maybe connotation with the woman who comes and tries to just touch the cloak of Jesus. There's a few places you could connect that. But when he gets back to his men, he says, like, that I couldn't have done that. I could not have killed him. And his reasoning is, he says, as the proverb goes, evil works are worked by evil men. And you're like, okay, well, that's a good proverb, I suppose. It's not in the book of Proverbs, but not all proverbs are, obviously. And so then the story just really moves on after he calls out to Saul. Saul says he's not going to hunt him anymore, and then does keep hunting him. But then it just moves on. And then you get this weird story of David has been living in the hill country, and he has been, helping out in that neighborhood. So fighting off raiders, he would have been, any predatory animals, he would have been fighting off as well. And so he's really just kind of a protector of this desert region. And there's a man named Naval who has a huge flock there. He's doing sheep shearing. It's this time of celebration. And David sends some messengers to just say, like, hey, any chance you'd want to share some of that with us? And I don't get the impression from the text that he was demanding it, like, hey, you owe us that. Just like, hey, we've been out here, we've been doing things. Would you be willing to share this with us? And Naval gets mad, and he is just like, why should I give you any of my stuff? Who are you to demand this stuff from me? And it's just flies off the handle, and sends the men back without anything, which enrages David. And David decides, okay, everybody get your stuff. We're going to go kill him and all of his people, and we're going to take all of his stuff. Which seems like a weird way for David to handle things after we just looked at that previous story. Like, why would he go from, I feel bad that I so much as cut off the tassel or the fringe of Saul's robe, and now he's going to murder a whole a man and all of his servants and everything like that to take food and wool and stuff like that. And so while they're actually like militarized, they're coming in. Naval's wife, Abigail, which is just an awesome name, I feel like, too. She comes out and she brings all kinds of food and stuff, and she comes and she apologizes for her husband, is like, here's all these things that I want to give you. You know, I know what you've done for this area and how you've supported us, and so I do want to give you what you asked for. And I hope that you will, you'll forgive my husband because he acted like an idiot. And she even says, like, he's foolish as his name implies. Which you may or may not notice, but the implication is that it's communicating that his name means like foolish or idiot or something like that, which it does. But it's not just somebody who's dumb, it's like a malicious idiot. It's somebody who does bad things out of their stupidity. And so she's saying, like, hey, you know, his name is mean, like malicious idiot, and he acts like a malicious idiot. And so, like, chalk this up to his stupidity. Chalk that malice up to stupidity rather than, holding it against him. And so forgive him. Which is why her name's cool, because her name comes from the idea of kinsman redemption that we see in like the story of Ruth and in a few places. And so it's like she is redeeming her dumb husband from his own folly. And David does. He sees like, hey, he is a wicked person. He's an evil idiot. And he's done an evil idiot kind of thing. And I had the opportunity to come and act just like him. I could have come in here and I could have attacked him. I could have killed him and taken all his stuff. And then who would have been the wicked idiot in that sense? I would have been the wicked idiot. And so you're kind of seeing that proverb that he quoted in the story before of evil works are worked by evil people. You could translate like Naval actions are committed by Naval people. And David learned his lesson from Naval of like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to act like him. So I'm not going to. I'm not going to do things that are in keeping with his personality. And so then he decides to refrain from attacking. He goes back to his place. He takes all the stuff that Abigail gave to his men. And so they're happy. And then the next thing we find out is right after that, something happens with Naval where he has like a stroke or something like that. It's not exactly clear exactly what happened, but essentially he has a attack of some medical condition and he dies. And so his punishment came back upon his head. David didn't need to come in and punish him and become him in doing so. Like David could have said, I will act like you and I'll become you. And in doing, like, that'll be how I get rid of you, but I'll become you and replace you. Instead, he said, I don't need to act like you. I can be who I want to be, who God wants me to be. And in the process, you'll be taken care of because of your evil that you're committing. And then we've got that next story with Saul, where Saul's asleep. And David just comes right into the camp and takes things that were right around Saul and just takes them up on the top of the hill and leaves them there. And then he wakes Saul up and he's like, hey, he yells at the commander. He's like, weren't you supposed to be protecting the king? Like, curses on you for not doing a better job. You failed to do something that was very important for you to do. So curses on you. And he shows Saul like, hey, look, I could have killed you, but I didn't. And so it kind of makes a sandwich. And I think the way that it is presented, where the story in the middle seems to be informing where David came up with that proverb. It seems like it is supposed to be read back into the story, where like David learned evil things are done by evil people. I don't want to act like that, so I won't, from the story that's presented afterward. But then you get the exact same story after that story, so that you can see like, okay, now I see David wasn't always this patient and gentle guy that refused to attack the Lord's anointed. He had to learn that. And so I think it's presented anachronistically, not in the normal timeline, so that you can then see like, oh, okay, yes, David was this rash jerk. He was the Naval in the Naval story. There's two Navals. There's the one actually named Naval, and David was acting like a Naval. But then David learned his lesson, and he doesn't act in the ways that you see that he doesn't act that way by the stories that surround it. And so it's just kind of a cool way that all of that plays out together in that narrative patterning to show how the one story influences the two stories in that way. And you see something similar with when Saul has the spirits that are coming to torment him earlier in the book of Samuel. It talks about how Saul first meets David by David's music. He's told that David's music is what brought David into Saul's presence and how he learned about him. And then right after that, you get a story about how Saul met David through the Goliath incident. And so a lot of people try to say like, oh, well, you've got different accounts and the author was just lazy putting them together. And so we just put both of them there. But you can see how it's put together in a way so that the way that it's shaped is meant to tell you something. And so you guys can go check out the story with the evil spirits and with Saul and how all that goes together. But for now, I just really like that progression of Saul relieving himself in the cave, the story with Naval and Abigail, and then the story of Saul sleeping out and David coming in there again. I think it's a really cool progression. So that's what I have for this week. If you are enjoying this series, please feel free to share with anybody else that you think would like it. Subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes of this. Make sure that you are thumbs upping videos so that it just boosts it up in the algorithm and other people can find these as well. I do want to announce I've been doing these videos every week, and it was always my intention to kind of do a little bit of every single week and then back it off a little bit. So I do this series and I do another series that's a more ask and response type setting, and I think I'm going to be kind of merging those into I'll do one or the other in a week. That way I've got some time to work on a couple other projects that I think you guys are really going to like, and I'll have more details on that as we get a little bit closer. But here in the future, you might see these drop down to every other week, and maybe the day of the week will change that I release them as well, just to kind of make up a little bit of room there. But for now, I really appreciate you guys being here. I hope this was a blessing for you, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.